Welcome to part 2 of our podcast on Chapter 16, the other descriptive research methods. If you are listening to this part before you've listened to part 1, you should go ahead and stop this recording and go ahead and listen to part 1 first. Go ahead and download that and listen to part 1 of this podcast. As a reminder, our objectives for this lesson are to describe and define descriptive research methods, to discuss the steps in conducting descriptive research methods, to identify strengths and weaknesses of descriptive research methods. In part 1, we had talked about developmental research methods and case studies. In this part, we will discuss the job analysis research methods, observational research methods, unobtrusive research methods, and correlational research methods. A job analysis. What is a job analysis? It's like a case study. It is a case study where a researcher examines particular aspects about a job. Can include professional preparation, can include any kind of training, can include development of products, marketing plans, etc. So it's just to figure out what's going on at the job. Again, it's a type of a case study. And our typical methods with a job analysis is we do surveys, interviews, or we can shadow somebody while they're going through their job and try to determine what they're doing to make decisions on the job itself. And I'll give you an example of a job analysis. Currently, I know somebody who is doing a job analysis at their work where they are involved in developing literature. Their job is to help those who are designing the literature to create good literature. This is at a hospital. You know, when you go to a hospital and you get sick, or maybe your children get sick, and they give you literature about follow-up care or about the illness or the disease. And you get something to read, to take home and read and learn about that. Well, this person is responsible for helping nurses or other medical staff to write that material. Well, they're having some issues with that, and so what this person is doing is developing a survey to understand the thought process of those who develop the literature for the patients. She's going on the back end to figure out why the people develop their materials the way they do, because the issues that she is having is that they write it at a level that's too high for the people who are reading it. It's not in a language, it's in language that it's, for doctors or nurses to understand, and needs to be written at a lower level that people who have no medical background, even to a level of kids, where they can understand it. So that's a job analysis, trying to understand what's going on at that workplace, at the hospital, so they can make changes in the way things are done at that place of work. Some of the weaknesses of this type of research method is that it's really based on self-perception, self-repeated nature of the data. The people can report negative or positive responses based on how they're feeling that day. If they're having a bad day, they may just blow up on you and may not give you real good information. So, again, that's job analysis, is trying to figure out what's going on at the workplace and trying to make changes at the workplace. That's really small within that organization. Our next type of research methods that we're going to talk about is called observational research. This is also known as systematic observation. And I had the fine pleasure of spending a whole 10-week summer class in a class where we spent the majority of the time talking about systematic observation. This can be used quite a bit in our area. One of the tools that's used in a lot of in our areas, it's talked about in the book, is called academic learning time, physical education. And so, just so you know, I do not suggest this method in trying to complete this graduate program. I think it's a little bit too involved. It's too time consuming. For this lecture, I have placed an article that shows systematic observation or observational research in course documents. It's an interesting article about Jerry Tarkanian. So if you might want to pause this recording, go and print that article out. It's in course documents under the assigned reading file in a descriptive research file. So we'll use that. I'll refer to that to help us understand that. Okay, so the purpose of observational research is actually like it sounds. It's just to observe. A researcher observes or watches the subject or subjects or subject, it can be one or many, behaviors or action over a period of time. Then at the end they describe what they found. They draw conclusions on what they found. Observations can be done via questionnaires, surveys, or they can actually watch, collect data, and analyze the data. Now, when you're doing an observational research, we need to answer these questions that I have here. What behaviors to observe, who to observe, where to observe, how many observations, when to observe. On the next slide is how to score their observations. So I'm going to go through each one of these questions and give you more information. I'll try to relate this back to the study that I have placed on Blackboard. I believe it's by Bloom, Crumpton, and Anderson, and this was done over at Fresno State, and I know three of those researchers. And the article title is A Systematic Observation Study of Teaching Behaviors of an Expert Basketball Coach. Okay, so what behaviors to observe? The researcher who's going to do this type of study must clearly define the exact behavior they want to observe and look at and study. For an example is what is an effective teaching? What the heck that means? This is a very ambiguous term. You have to be more specific on what is effective teaching. You have to clearly define the different things, categories within that would make somebody an effective teacher. Now in the study, they observed and recorded the teaching behaviors and the verbal cues of Jerry Tarkanian. These teaching behaviors and verbal cues were clearly defined. If you see on page 162 of the article, they clearly defined 12 categories of teaching behaviors. 10 of them were common coaching categories. One was related to humor, and one was for uncodable behaviors. So we got like technical instruction, tactical instruction, and they clearly define what each one of those behaviors mean. And so those are the behaviors that they were observing for. So those are you have to have clear definitions for the behaviors you want to observe. And the next question is who to observe. Who are your subjects? It can be a subject or it can be multiple subjects. It can be a classroom. If you got a class of 30, it'd be kind of hard to observe. Is it the teacher? Is it their behavior they're trying to observe? In our study, they studied Jerry Tarkanian. He was, in an article said he was unaware of the behaviors he was being observed for. And so he would just act as natural as possible in this setting. Okay, so who do you want to observe? Who's your subjects? Where will you observe the subjects? So, where the book talks about two different settings: the natural setting, which would be in a classroom or a gym, or the unnatural setting, which would be like a lab. Obviously, the natural setting would be more like the real world, the actual place, and unnatural would be unlike the real world, but it gives you control of particular things within the study. And so you can control different variables. Just depends on your research question and depends on your what you're trying to